All right, welcome all. It's Raymond for Stream Gamers again. We are on part 5 of our milk run. So today we're going to be flying a WestJet livery of a A320 fly-by-wires version, flavor and so forth. We're going to be flying from PASI to PAPG. That is our flight today. So we will. I'm just looking up my other part of my other flight plan here, making sure I've got it right. Yes. So that's Sitka in Alaska to Petersburg, James A. Johnson. All Alaska, obviously. This is the milk run that we're doing in Alaska. And our focus today will be the A320, made or brought to us by Fly-by-Wires. Pretty in-depth version of the A320. It is freeware, so we'll just give a quick shout out to those makers of the aircraft and all the time in which they put into it to allow us to have this aircraft for free, that we don't have to pay for it. You can find them online at Fly-by-Wire. So without further ado, let's get inside the aircraft and kind of understand a little bit about the differences and nuances and so forth, and then kind of go in, jumping into the actual setup. So like the A310, this one has a flight bag as well. I've gone over sim brief on a number of videos, so I'll spend a little time about that. But in here we can bring in the flight plan into the flight bag using this. Now this doesn't bring the flight plan into the MCDU, it just brings it into the flight bag so that we have the particulars and so forth within here. If you wish to have a text form of it, it's here. So you can click on this and you can just whoop, and you can browse through at your will. You can zoom in on it and you can zoom in out on it if you like. In here is where we're going to remove the wheel chocks, the safety cones, the jet bridge, and we're going to add fuel, payload, and pushback as well, respectively, in here. So the first thing is that we want to do is we want to load our fuel. And because I've got this in sim brief, I'm able to click on this little thing down here, and that's to pull from sim brief the total amount of fuel required to do the flight. So I've got that in here. I press play, and that loads the fuel into the aircraft. Same thing goes for the payload. I click on this to bring it in, and now our aircraft is loaded with passengers. We've got what is our zero fuel weight, our cargo, and the amount of passengers that we're carrying and so forth. And pushback, we will look at that shortly. So that's enough for this. We're going to disconnect the jet bridge. Or in this case, this jetway. Not sure why they call it jet bridge, but maybe that is the perfect or the proper terminology for it. Now, let's go into here and we'll start talking about, or start going over through some of the systems and how to get the aircraft started and put the flight plan in and all that good stuff. Batteries are located right here. Batteries come on. We then turn on available ground power. We must have ground power available in order to start the aircraft, or at least I don't know. Unlike other aircraft, I've been able to start them without insisting on ground power. I've been able to just start the APU up. But the pumps don't come on board. So this is the pump for the APU, so fire that up. And the APU systems, switches and whatnot are right here. Master switch for the APU. This is to start the APU. This is to put the APU bleed on. So we turn that on, we give it a few seconds, and then we turn on the start. And if we look down on the near the MCDU, we have this panel right here. We can turn on the APU and we can see the APU is coming online. We know the APU is online once we have the hertz and the voltage here. That doesn't mean we're consuming any of it because we're on ground power. But once this is indicating right here the volt and the hertz, then we know that we're ready to go. The flap being open, I understand the flap being open is that the APU bleed is not turned on. I could be wrong about that. Let me turn some brightness up on this just so we can Get a little more illumination there, and so it's a little brighter, a little easier to see. So we can see we got 115 volt, 400 hertz. We're going to turn up the captain side displays a bit. So we see that the displays are not fully illuminated, and that's one of the reasons for that, or the reason for that. Yeah, let's not. Is the IRS alignment isn't done. So we put those IRS switches into nav mode. It's hard to see, but there it says nav there in the center. Now we're going to come down here and we're going to brighten this up. And we're going to start looking at the MCDU. Let's get a good view on that MCDU, kind of centered in the frame there a bit. Okay. Okay, so we click on this. Once we click on that, primary GPS primary is lost. That's because it's not aligned yet, but it will be here shortly. Click on init. Click on init request. And again, this is linked back to SimBrief. Now you have to put your SimBrief credentials into here to get it to work. We'll maybe do another video on that, but there's tons of videos on how to set that up. So we click that, it pulls and it inserts all of the relevant information into here, both the IRS alignment. We finish that, we give that a minute. That should do it. Oh, hasn't yet. Why not? Not available. Not available. Why? Let's try that again. There we go. There we go. So it needs to do this. So now the alignment is done, and maybe I just didn't wait long enough for that. But nevertheless, then we return back out. So we got our particulars here. We know that our cruise altitude is 17,000 feet. So let's go up here and adjust 17,000 feet. Oops, let's not do it there. Let's put 17,000 here. 17,000. Our next step is our zero fuel weight calculation. Now, because all this is brought in through SimBrief, all that information is here already. So we just have to click on the button, click it again, it puts it in. The fuel planning, if we click on that, we do the fuel planning, 2.4. And if we looked back on the flight bag, we would see, hang on. I don't know why the fuel block is at 2.4. That's 2.4 thousand. I mean, that is enough fuel. So we'll leave it at that. It seems weird to me, if I confirm that, it seems weird to me that the fuel block is 2.4 when I can see here that the fuel is 4.2, not 2.4. I'm not sure the reasoning behind that. And if I were to go this and this, I should be able to manually change that fuel block to that. So and that's what I'm going to do. Right. So now we're going to look at the flight plan. The flight plan, this is our departure, and this is our arrival. When you get a discontinuity like this, you can hit clear, and you can do that. Now, in part, that discontinuity that we saw there, that is because there isn't a direct path from this point to this point, because there is no RNAV approach. So it's a manual flight in, and that's why that discontinuity is there. We're actually we should then be expecting ATC to vector us in and tell us how to fly it in. I'm going to go over that as we get closer and explain what my intentions are to kind of overcome that. Right. So our flight plan is in there. If I turn this out, we can see there's our flight plan. If I turn this like so, you can see there's our flight plan. Here's our aircraft. We're going from there and we're going to take off. If I come down here, click on the departure. Now, which runway are we going to depart on? Well, let's see what the weather is. Again, for those that don't know, I use Navigraph and it gives me weather information, but there's other systems out there that allow you to see what winds and weather are. For example, SimBrief's got this SimBrief panel, so we can fetch that same data in the way we did before. There's our weather, so we can see what our average winds are. We can see our temperature, what our temperature is. We can see the actual winds and so on, and get a good forecast. I don't understand a lot of this, and so I just haven't taken the time to read through it all and fully understand what all this is. So I don't use that. I use Navigraph. So Navigraph tells me that our weather is, we got winds at 310 at 4 knots. So coming out at 310 at 4 knots tells me we probably should depart on 29. So we'll click on 29. And we're going to use a BKA4. We're going to hit insert. Now again, notice how we've got from this destination to this destination, we've got this discontinuity. Again, there's no direct path for it, so we would expect ATC to vectors through that, but we're going to eliminate that because we're just going to not use ATC. Here's our arrival, so we click on the arrival, click on arrival again. Now, let's look at the weather. I'll go look at the weather for our arriving airport and see whether or not which one we should come in on. So our arriving airport, winds are at 80 and at 4 knots. So 80 and at 4 knots, we'll use the 05 runway, so 05. We don't have a star, so we're not going to pick a star, nor are we going to pick a transition because there isn't any, so we're going to hit insert. We're going to see the flight plan now fully line itself up here and fully display itself. And so we can see here we are. We're going to take off from here, go here, turn around and start coming in, and we're going to come up and go here. Now, it's kind of hard to see that, but what we're going to actually end up doing is, that's on plan, yes, okay. And let me see if I can get us a little closer to that view. There, that's probably going to do it, yeah. And then I can zoom that in just a whisker. So you can see how we come here and we come here and we go in. This is the way the flight plan is laid up, but we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of fly from this waypoint. We're going to kind of fly straight out this way, and there's a valley here that allows us to come into the airport. And we're going to fly here and we're going to come on that valley. And I'll explain that as we get a little further along. All right. Flight plan is in place. Let us look at our performance chart. Now, you can use all kinds of calculations for this. And in fact, I do believe in the services, no, just bear with me. I'll get myself to where I think I need to be. Somewhere's in here, there is a place where we can push back fuel services, push back. There's a place in here where we can actually start looking at the runway and all of that stuff. I've flown this aircraft quite a bit over the years, and because of that, I usually don't use a lot of this data in here that's in here. I usually don't use a lot of it. Is what I'm trying to say. So maybe I'll get away from that. 135 is our V1, 136 is our V2, and 141 is 136 is VR and 141 is V2. We're going to rotate on around 140. Our flaps are 1. Our flex temp is 59. Now there are flex temp calculators out there that you can use to do calculations to find out what your actual flex temp should be. But for those that don't want to go through that process, you can almost always put 59 or even 60 degrees as your flex and your flaps is 1, and you're pretty much going to be fine. Now, what that flex refers to is this right here on the throttle quadrant. You can see flex. So when we push the throttles forward for takeoff, we're going to push the throttles forward and we're going to put it into this flex right here. We're going to hold it in flex until we depart and we climb out and we get good positive climb rate. We'll pull the gear up. And at that point, at some point within that area, we will then pull the throttles back to CL, or from what I understand, the abbreviation CL is climb. So that's the process, and it uses this flex temp to determine how much thrust to have to be able to take off at the prescribed cost index. So my cost index is this, meaning it's going to thrust as much as that cost index says to thrust to climb out. We could turn that up or we could turn that down, but that's the default from SimBrief. So we're going to leave that right where it is. So our next thing is we're going to come back into here. We're going to go into our next phase. Our next phase is our climb mode. So this is our climb. Our cost index is 10. We're going to climb and maintain 290 knots where possible. Of course, not between 0 and 10,000, but beyond 10,000, we're going to maintain 290 knots. We could change that and say, no, I don't want to do 290. I want to do something less than that. We use our cruise, and our cruise is the same way. We're going to cruise at 290, and we can change that. We say, no, I don't want to cruise that fast, and we can put a different figure in here, and it'll adhere to that. Our next one is our descent. So our descent is at 288. And again, we can change that. We're not going to change any of these things. We're going to leave them all as the default because they work. I've tested the flight and it works fine. So Q&H. Q&H is now, this is the area where we're going to talk about the weather at the arriving airport. Typically, you wouldn't put this information in now because if you're flying 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, 10 hours out there, then you don't know the actual current weather that's there. But this flight is about 40 minutes. It's actually about 30 minutes. And so the weather isn't going to change, a great deal between now and then. So I'm going to enter this information in. So I go to my arriving airport in Navigraph, and I go under my weather, and I see my weather is in here, and I can see, okay, we are, our QNH is 10:27. So 10:27. Now, I am in Canada. I am metric. For those that are imperial, you can do this accordingly if you like, but just be aware that the aircraft defaultly comes as a metric aircraft. You'd have to go inside and make some changes. The temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. Mag and wind. Mag is the direction of the wind, which direction the wind is coming from in degrees, and the wind is how much of wind is there. And so in this case it's 080, so it's 080, that's the direction, and the wind is at 4 knots. So that's how we put that in there. The rest of it we're going to leave it alone, and we're done. So we've got our performance, we've got all this done, we've got our flight plan done. We are pretty much ready to go and start thinking about, pushing back and getting the engine started. One final thing before I do that, I'm going to kind of go over some of the differences between the Airbus as opposed to the Boeing thing. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, I do have an internet connection, but that's all right. I appreciate the warning. So these little globes, as I refer to them, they are telling us that the aircraft is in managed mode, meaning the MCDU and all of its parameters are going to manage these things. So they're going to manage the heading, going to manage the speed, it's going to manage the altitude up to 17,000 feet, right? So if I say, no, I don't want it to manage, I can remove that by pushing the down arrow. That would remove it. Once I'm in the air and I say, no, I no longer want the aircraft to manage my altitude, I can push the down arrow on the respective button, and that'll change that. The same thing for my speed control. I can do that. This is terrible. Anyways, we'll get through that. We'll move on. Okay, so that is what I wanted to discuss over there. Like the Boeing has RNAV and VNAV. We have this LS button. This LS button is, the way I understand it, you need to have LS pressed if you're going to utilize type of an instrument landing, whether it be an ILS or, you know, Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3 type of ILS. You need to have that button pressed. This flight is not going to be about that. We're going to use the systems to fly us on a given flight path until we reach this flight point, right, or this point right here, LVD. Once we start turning on LVD, we are then going to turn off manage heading, and we're going to dial in our actual heading in which we want the head for, which is going to be very close to 360 degrees, 350 degrees, something in that area. Okay, so our gateway is disconnected. That's good. We need to come up here. Before we get ready to start engines and pushback and everything else, we need to put the APU bleed on. We also need to be mindful of the pumps. We need to turn on our fuel pumps. We can turn off our auxiliary, our external power, because we are going to then switch over to we're going to switch over to APU. Notice before this was at 0. Now we're using 51% of the APU, meaning the jet is being electrically powered by the APU and only the APU. Okay. So let's go through pushback and how we're going to push back and what our intentions are. First things first is runway 29 is back over there somewhere. So we will push back. We'll push back and we'll kind of go over here, finish startup procedures and blah blah blah, and we'll taxi out. That's the game plan. So let's get us to our pushback menu. There it is. So in the pushback menu, we have the pushback system, which is turned on or turned off. If you turn it on, you are eliminating ATC's pushback system. So when you click on that, you get this notification to tell us that, hey, listen, you understand that we're using this, and other pushback systems can have conflicting results. So if you have another pushback manager or system, then don't use this one, probably use that one. I just hit confirm to that. My park brake is still engaged. I'm going to call the tug. And we should see our tug moving around there. There it is. And it's going to engage itself. The tug speed is just that. It's the speed on how fast the tug is going. So you can speed that pushback up, or push back, or you can slow it down. Basically, is what I'm saying. So, yes, let's disengage park brake. And so if we look here, our park brake is disengaged. We presume at this point the tug is fully engaged, because you really shouldn't disengage until you are. It is. So now we're going to begin the pushback part. Our intentions are to go back, so you can see it moving. And now I can change the speed in which that is doing. Right there. So it's pushing back. So now let's begin our start. We got that engaged. We come down here. And we turn that engine on. We should be seeing this count up. It is. The fuel is turned on, and this engine will come alive. Once it does come alive, I could actually turn off the APU. No, I can't turn the APU off yet. Sorry, take that back. I can't turn the APU off yet. So we'll let it keep on doing that. Let's just measure where we are in our pushback. Soon we'll start turning left. That engine is almost online. I'm going to start thinking about making that left turn here shortly. Let's do it now. So there's the turn that it's doing. You can see it. You can see the engine is spinning up. You can see that if we look up here, in terms of what's actually happening, the generator, the engine gen is just coming online right now. So I know that engine is started. We're using the power from that generator. So we will then begin the same procedure for the next engine. We'll get it started. We'll just manage our pushing back here a bit. See where we're at. That fuel truck should go away. And if we watch here, we're coming up. Soon this is going to start to jump up. There it is. It's starting to go. N1 is starting to come up. N2 is up good. There it goes. AGT is on its way up. And again, what will happen, I should stop pushback right now. So what we do here is we pause our pushback. We put our park brake on. We dismiss the tug. And when we've dismissed the tug, there it goes. I can then decide to turn this off if I want, but I typically just leave it on. Let's just make sure that engine, see the, the generator on this engine is not up. There it is. It's online right now. So we've got all of the generators, both generators on, both engines are started, ready to go. I could, in theory, I could shut the APU off, which I will. And we should be sitting here running. So next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our flaps are set to flaps 1. We want our speed brake is armed. I want to check that anti-skid is on, which it is. Gears proper, which we should have probably checked ahead of time. You notice that the APU is no longer running the aircraft anymore. It's at 0%. We're not utilizing the APU anymore. However, we still have EGT temp, and we still have this open and everything else. This will eventually stall out, and that will go away. I'm going to then switch over to the engine, and so I'm going to be displaying my engines here now. Okay, oops, wrong button. Engine is started. We are ready to start pushing ourselves forward and getting going. So I'm going to use this to take off the park brake, and we'll let the throttle move us forward. So I will, as I said before, I will be pushing the throttles into flex for takeoff. I won't do that immediately. Right there is my flex indicator. It's kind of hard to see. Normally I use sounds to tell me that I'm in those modes because I can hear the throttle clicking. But right now I can't. So here we go. We're rolling. And there's flex. Oh, we'll wait for that 140, 150, and we'll start pulling up. Here we go. Rotate. Positive rate of climb. Gear up. I'm going to start turning right away because we have a pretty sharp turnaround here. We're going the opposite direction of takeoff. So I can bring the nose down a bit so we can gain some more speed. My intentions are that as soon as we get reasonable control here, I'm going to hit this autopilot button. Autopilot. And there she goes. We're going to bring the flaps up. So that is pretty much the end of the departure. As we do, we will reach top of climb, and we will also have a top of descent. Now, I haven't found it in here anywhere, but I'm sure it does exist. I just haven't found it. But when I look, at Simbri's flight plan, it shows me markers of top of climb and top of descent. Okay, so we are pretty close to our top of descent. We'll start thinking about what we're going to do to get ourselves down on the ground. So we're at 17,000 feet. We're going to start our descent. And our initial descent will be 5,000. So we click on that, and that should get our aircraft to start coming down. It's backing the throttles off first before it makes the descent. So be mindful of that. When you click the down arrow, don't concern that it isn't immediately coming down, but be aware that when you do that, don't get don't wait until you're right on your top of descent for the thing to begin its descending, because it does need a minute to throttle itself down a bit. So we're going to come down. We're going to look at our Navigraph charts here, because it shows a much better picture of what we're attempting to do. So here we are right here. The plan will be to get to this waypoint and make this abrupt turn to 320 degrees. We're going to fly along here. Put this waypoint in here, but really I should have put it a little closer up here. But our plan is to kind of turn in and follow this valley and come in like this. So that's the game plan. We'll be mindful of our heading of 320 degrees, and we'll get ready for that as we begin our turn here at this point. Because this turn initially was going more on a trajectory of like this, you know, it's direct to the airport. So that heading will be much different than what this is. But we'll make that change as we get closer to that LVD waypoint. We are just coming across what was considered our top of descent right now. And I think what I'll do is I think I'll keep the altitude up a little bit, although there isn't anything here that tells me that 5,000 is dangerous. So I might change my mind about that. Let's keep it coming down to 5,000. On Navigraph, I'll quickly zoom in on that quickly one more time. So you can see that our flight path will take us across this little bump, which is 1,670 feet. We'll fly past this. We'll fly all past this. We may get a portion of this, 3,200 feet, although we're going to be, if we do, we're going to catch these lower areas of 1,000 feet. So 5,000 feet should be plenty to bring ourselves down. And once we get across this, we may even bring ourselves down closer to 2,000 feet. I should be able to fly all of this with 2,000 feet and be fine. There is this one thing right here that is indicated as 1,000 feet. So we want to be probably 2,000 feet, just to be 1,000 foot above that. So we will probably reach our 5,000 foot altitude, depending on where we get it. You know, I'll probably begin our descent down as well from there. It will start to become more of a manual control, and the automation will just kind of go away. As you can see right now, there is no automation on this. The globe is gone. So the MCDU is not necessarily controlling this. The preset of 5,000 is actually controlling it, although the descent rate is still being controlled by the MCDU. And that, what I mean by that is how fast of a descent rate is actually taking place. So let's just look and see where we're at in the big world of things. We're still 10,000 feet. We slowed our descent rate down because we want to get below 250 knots. We'll very soon no, I guess I was going to say I'm very soon going to start taking over. I won't be taking over the aircraft, but I will be very soon disabling the managed portion of it and start managing the heading and speed and everything else with the auto throttle myself. So we're down to our needed 250 knots, below 10,000. And I guess in theory we should have, well, they are still on. Forgot to turn them off again. Well, whatever. So there we are. We'll let it keep coming down and let it keep coming down. Our airport that we're going to is kind of right here behind the pillar. It's off in that direction, I believe. Maybe like up there somewhere. This waterway that you can see ahead of us right here, that's the waterway that I believe that's the one we're going to be flying down. And I think that's the valley we're going to be going up. So we're going to be kind of coming down this waterway and going up that valleyway there. And I think the airport, now that I think about it, might be closer to here. Unless, let's go out of the cockpit. bit and see if we can see a better view of what we're looking at. Yeah, I believe that's the valley that we're going to be taking. Could be that one too, I guess. But I think it's that one. Once we get closer there, I'm going to be able to see it better. And our waypoint is just up in here somewhere is where we're beginning our turning. So let's start going across here and seeing, you know, what we're going to do in terms of managing it ourselves. So if I click on that, that's our heading. We are flying, and if you look at here, there's our heading of 079 degrees. If I click on the down arrow, that's our speed. We are flying at 250 knots. So those are being managed like that. Once I reach my 5,000, which I'm very close to it right now, I will manage my vertical descent automatic or manually as well. So we're going to do that. When we get into here, we need to pull this out of the CL mode, and we need to put it into the auto throttle mode. That's the A throttle mode. So we're still now controlled by the auto throttle. It wants us to put it into climb lever because it's assuming we're going to do a more controlled MCDU type system of flying and landing and so forth, but we're not going to. We could come up here and we could turn these off, which will eliminate that for us, right? If we turn these functions off, that, from what I understand, eliminates the manage mode. I never do it because I'm not sure. I never really tested it, so we'll just leave it the way it is. I think what I'll do is I'll start decreasing our speed just a little bit. Yeah, maybe the summer's in that area. And we're moving along here. So we're going to get there, and we're going to be turning to 320 degrees. So we're just dialing this dial to 320 once we're ready to do so. I suppose there's no harm in doing it now. 320. Oops. And our altitude, I'm going to bring that down a skosh. Vertical speed, we're going to bring that. We're going to start descending a bit. That'll be fine. Why are we descending? It's a really good question. Why are we descending? Should be descending. Here we go. So, as I said before, I think that's the airport we're coming to, and I believe there's a channel right in here somewhere is where we're actually going to go. That little bump I was telling you about, that was like 1,700 feet or so. That's this little bump right here that we're flying across and over top of. We'll get ourselves closer to 3,000 here. We're at 4,200 right now. Turn ourselves a bit more. Really, as I said, we really should be at 320. That's where I wanted to be. I think that's the valley right here. So soon, what we'll do is we will remove auto throttle. I mean, we'll remove all of the autopilot functions, and I'll be flying it manually. I'm just confirming that that is the valley, or is that the valley? I think that's the valley up here. Yeah, that's the valley up there. Very good. So we're gonna bring our throttle back. Bring it back into flap range. We'll bring our descent altitude down.
$2,500. $2,500.
We can start turning in. Because we're coming on 0.5, we can presume its summer's around 0.50 is the heading.
2,500.
2,500.
2,500.
So it's coming along pretty decently. That's our airport right there. So I think it's time to disengage and begin this whole thing ourselves. So we'll disengage the auto throttle, we'll disengage the autopilot, we'll press the little red button to make sure it is disengaged, and we'll keep our altitude a little bit, we'll get our flaps down a bit. I can see the threshold of the runway right now. It is up in this direction right here. We are speeding a little bit. Let's just get that backed off. Lots of flaps. Gear is coming down. Another notch of flaps. We're pretty much configured. Let's just make sure our gear is all the way down. It is all the way down. We'll put our auto brakes to max. A good landing speed, for me anyways, is around 140. In that 140 range. It didn't have to be exactly 140. I do struggle trying to maintain that. Let's get the rest of the flaps out. But if I'm in that 140 range, you can land them as I think as slow as 121. Of course, that's dependent on passengers' fuel and runway length and all of that good stuff. Altitude, I would imagine, runway altitude. Speaking of which, runway altitude is 113 feet. As I've done with most videos, or with all my videos, I will not redo the video just because I've had a terrible landing. Or takeoff for that matter. So the landings and takeoffs will always be the way they are. Good or bad, but they will be the way they are. I'm a little high. I'm going to get the nose up a little bit. I just want to have the nose be able to pitch up on that final so I can fly
1,000
onto the ground. 1,000 it's called for. We'll not be going around. We will be continuing.
500. 400.
'Pull up, pull up,
200.
Warning about the
pull
trees.
up, pull up,
A little bit of flare.
50. 20. 10. 5.
We got full reverse on. Get ourselves to slow down a bit. Reversers can come off. The flaps can come up. So that is the stream. That is the milk run part 5. Mostly everything went the way it was planned, with the exception of that braking system. If you liked the video, please like. I appreciate a comment and a subscribe if you would. If you dislike the video, by all means, go ahead and hit the dislike button. But again, like I say, please tell me why you disliked it, so that I'm able to do things differently. I've said it many times. I'm happy to hear the criticism, if you have some, on how I could do things better and make it more entertaining and make it more intuitive and so on and so on. Anyways, without further ado, that's the end of it. My name is Raymond again, and this is Stream Gamers. I look forward to producing the 6th iteration of our flight plan. Bye-bye now.